Welcome to the channel. I'm Tony the Technician, and today we're going to be going back into my 23 Colorado and making some changes in the rear of the truck. So if you guys follow the channel, you guys know I've done quite a bit to the Colorado, and basically I installed a lift when they first came out, and that's from Rough Country, which isn't suited for the Trail Boss. The reason being the rear of the truck already has a 1-inch block. The Rough Country kit includes an additional 1-inch block. So they're your double stacking blocks, and that's kind of a no-no. You should replace the two 1-inch blocks with a 2-inch block or go a different route. I personally have been having, not necessarily issues, but a clunking noise in the rear, and that could, for my scenario, be two things. The blocks that are stacked shifting, plus you always need to double check your U-bolts, because even if you have double stack blocks or not, U-bolts are very common to come loose, and that allows your leaf springs to kind of shift back and forth inside of the U-bolt. So not only is it important to check that, but GM is very well known for their leaf springs slapping or squeaking, and that's basically the primary and secondary leaves just kind of slapping each other, and you get a clunking noise, or you'll get squeaking noise because the isolators on them are pretty much useless. What we're going to be doing to the truck today is we are going to be installing new bump stops. We're going to be installing isolators between the leaf springs to alleviate that noise. We're going to be removing the Rough Country 1-inch block and switching to the CCE Shackle to get the truck back where it needs to be. And then I'm also going to be doing an add-a-leaf, because with my truck I have my bed rack with its accessories, the awning, the tent, and then inside of my bed I have the MOLLE panels with accessories, an inverter, my bed slide with all of my work tools on it. So I'm constantly carrying about 600 pounds in the rear, so even though the truck should be level with all of this weight, it sits about 1 inch lower in the rear. So with switching from the block to the shackle should help, and doing the add-a-leaf should raise the truck another about 1.5 inches. So it should bring it nice and level. Plus with the add-a-leaf, and it adds an additional 750 pounds of capacity. So with all of these changes, we should alleviate any noises and sagging in the rear. Stay tuned for the next video. I was going to include it in this video, but I think it kind of deserves its own video. I have the Icon 10-way adjustable shocks on the way. So like with my truck, with the lift that's on it and the shocks that are on it, it is very known for trucks with leaf spring setups to kind of bounce. But when I have all of this weight and where my truck is lifted at, I feel like it's kind of sitting in an awkward angle or position on the shock. I'm not sure, but when I hit concrete and the cracks in the concrete, my truck continuously bounces. So I'm hoping with this add-a-leaf and the new Icon shocks, that should alleviate it, should create a nice ride. We'll go over the items that I have here. I'll quickly show them to you, and then we'll get them installed. And then once again, stay tuned for the next video where we actually install the Icon shocks. But if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns on these items, please feel free to drop a comment down below. If you guys enjoy, make sure to smash that thumbs up. And as always, if you haven't subscribed, make sure to subscribe. Let's get into this. Over here, this is all ordered from CCE, Colorado and Canyon Enthusiasts. Great company to work with. They've got a lot of great parts. Basically anything that's available for the new Colorados and Canyons, they have it. So if you have any questions, reach out to them. They're really responsive, and they've helped me out a lot with everything that I've done to the truck. So over here we have the longer shackles, and then here we have the off-road bump stops, which instead of being like the factory ones where your body comes down and hits the bump stop and it's like a pretty harsh hit, these are kind of dual zone, so it kind of cushions the blow, as you can see here. Here are the shackles. They're just going to drop the rear of the leaf spring set by 1 inch. We'll just use the factory hardware in order to install this. You can get this with new hardware as well. Here's the Deaver add-a-leaf. There you can see the part number, made in the USA. Here's a little torque sheet for depending on the U-bolts that you're running. Will tell you the torque that you need to torque them down to. This hole is offset. The longer end of the leaf will go to the back of the truck. And a pretty nice little product here. Should help with capacity and the ride. Here we have the factory U-bolts, which are, I believe, a 1/2 inch, where I think the ones that came with the lift kit are 5/8. So these are going to be a different torque spec than the ones that are on it now. And then I also have this, which is 1/8 inch rubber with a adhesive backing. If I have to zip tie it to the leaf springs, I will, but I'm going to cut them 2.5 inches wide to match the leaf springs and isolate each leaf spring so we don't have that clattering going on. And that's really it. Hopefully I've got all the tools I need in order to accomplish this job. I'm almost guaranteeing that I forget at least one tool, but hopefully we can still get the job done. It shouldn't be too bad. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to drop it down below, and let's go ahead and get into this. Okay, so here's just kind of everything that I'm using. Angle grinder, there's my extra add a leaf, torque wrench, locking pliers, sockets, ratchet, pliers, hammer, punch, impact, Loctite. Here's the bump stop, shackle. Here's my rubber isolators that I've cut, but I'll kind of walk you through everything. Once you get the vehicle jacked up in the air and rested on some jack stands, lower the rear end but still support it with a jack, and then you'll go ahead and remove the fastener holding the shock in. Then just place the bolt back in the threads. Then we're gonna go ahead and remove the U-bolts. Here, there's 4 nuts on the bottom of the plate. Yours, if it's factory, should be a 21 millimeter. These are the Rough Country U-bolts, so they're gonna be a 22 millimeter. Then go ahead and remove your U-bolts. So next you're going to remove the shackle, which are going to be 2 21 millimeter bolts with a nut on the back side. And there's the rear shackle. Now that I have the rear shackle removed, I'm not going to install the new one until later because I'm going to have to move the leaf springs around. Go ahead and remove the bump stop. We're going to replace that with a new one. This is a 15 millimeter. You're going to want some locking pliers on the bottom, and then remove the nut from the top, decompressing the leaf springs. Now I can remove my 1-inch block from Rough Country. After decompressing the leaf springs, you're going to go ahead and remove your lower leaf spring by rocking it back and forth. You're going to remove this fastener. You're no longer going to use this. You're going to go ahead and use a punch and knock out this roll pin in the lower leaf spring. Next, what I've done was install the rubber isolators on top of the bottom leaf and on top of the addle leaf. I've also put one on the leaf springs and underneath here so they make contact. So hopefully that'll stop the clattering. Next, you're just going to stack your leaf springs. From this hole, the shorter end is going to face towards the front of the truck. The longer end of the leaf spring will face towards the rear of the truck. Now you simply put it underneath your leaf springs, and then you'll pass this bolt through. Then you can go ahead and compress the leaf springs with clamps. These aren't the preferred ones. It's probably a lot easier if you have some ratcheting ones. And you can get the nut started. And if this is at an angle, don't worry too much about that. That's just your rear end. The pins are lined up on the axle. Once the axle or rear end is slid back into position, it will be straight. But just keep compressing the springs and tightening down this nut until they're all compressed. Once you have this tightened down, you can go ahead and remove your clamps. Now we'll have to come in and we will need to cut this off so the bump stop will actually sit down on it. So we'll come in with our angle grinder and cut right above the nut. With the rear shackle, you're going to take the longer end and that's going to go towards the top, and then this plate is going to go towards the rear of the truck. And just simply slide your leaf spring in. And these are 21 millimeters. And then we'll come back and torque those down once everything else is installed. Now we have to be able to install the bump stop, so we're gonna have to remove or cut the top of this stud and then we'll be able to install the U-bolts and bump stop. And once you've done that, you should be able to set your bump stop on top, and now we can start reinstalling the U-bolts. So next we're going to be installing the U-bolts and the lower bracket. I'm using, or going back to, the factory U-bolts from the rough country. These are 1/2 inch compared to, I believe, the 5/8 for the rough country. Just simply drop these on here. So the torque specs are going to be different, so depending on what U-bolts you're running, make sure you check the torque specs, which that Add-A-Leaf did state the torque range. For these 1/2 inch, I'm gonna go about 80 foot-pounds, and always make sure to double check after a day or two, and then a week, and then a month, because they will back off. So I will be using a little bit of blue Loctite on them, just to help keep them in place. And these are gonna be 21mm fasteners. And once you have the fasteners started, you can kind of move your bump stop around where you need it, and then go ahead and tighten them. All right, now that I have the U-bolts tightened down, I'll go ahead and torque them. So we have the bump stop in, the U-bolts torqued down to 80 foot-pounds. We have the Add-A-Leaf in, the isolators in, the rear shackle is in. So everything's done. Now we just need to reinstall the shock, which we will be doing a video next on replacing these stock shocks with the Icon 10-way adjustables, so stay tuned for that video. But I'm just gonna go ahead and install the shock now, and then we can reassemble or lift the rear end up and get the wheels back on it. Okay, so now that we got everything installed, you just simply lift the truck back up, reinstall the wheel, torque it down. From my research, it seems to be 140 foot-pounds for these. I think when I had these installed, the shop's at 160. I'm gonna set them at 140 and just double check. So just make sure you check out all the torque ratings for anything that you're installing. And then that, once we get these back on and torqued down, we'll set the truck down and we will see what the difference is. Before, my front end was 40 inches and the rear end was 38 inches. So let's go ahead and get these installed and see if we're closer to that 40 inches. Nope. Before we started, the front was at 40 inches to this bevel part right here, and the rear was 38. And now we're at 40 1/4 on this side. So much better. So obviously, if you're just doing leaf springs, you can take just that information, or the bump stops, or the isolators, or the rear shackle. Hopefully this video really helped. But that's it as far as the rear end adjustments and changes as of right now, until we get the Icon shocks in, and then we'll go ahead and get those installed. So stay tuned for that video. So that's it as far as the install of the bump stops, the off-road bump stops, the self-made leaf spring isolators, the Add-A-Leaf from Deaver, and the 1-inch shackle lift from CCE. I actually ordered all of this from CCE, so if you guys are interested in any of that, well, everything came from there except for the self-made isolators, which I bought on Amazon, 10-foot roll for like 10 bucks or something like that. Very affordable, and I have some left over for anything I need in the future. So as far as install, everything's pretty straightforward and easy. It's just getting the truck up in the air, getting the rear end lowered, and supporting the rear end while you basically disassemble the leaf springs. And I get it, not a whole lot of people are going to be doing all of these things, but hopefully this video will still help you if you're doing an Add-A-Leaf or a shackle, or maybe just the leaf spring isolators. In that case, you can just use a screwdriver and kind of pry the leaves apart to get the rubber in there. Now, obviously, if you have adhesive style like I do, it's not going to work that great, but you can also get it without the adhesive if you just want to wedge it in there. And then the bump stops are extremely easy just by removing the U-bolts and simply replacing it. But if you do the add a leaf, you will have to cut that bolt that goes up, that pinches all of the leaves together. That will need to be cut. But other than that, the install for everything went extremely easy. As far as torque specs, it's going to depend on what you're installing. Like I said, the U-bolt sizes are different from the factory and some of the lift kits available for our vehicles. So if you guys have any questions, I'll do my best to answer it down in the comments. But if you guys enjoyed the video, please make sure to smash that thumbs up. Leave a comment down below of your guys' thoughts. And as always, subscribe if you're not a subscriber. Stay tuned for the install of the new Icon shocks coming soon, and I'll see you guys next time.